Hello, I'm Fast Lawyer. I'm with Oculus Rift Reviews. Today we're going to review and play Discontinue VR. Discontinue VR is a game on the Steam store for the Valve Index, HTC Vive, and the Oculus Rift. It was released June 10th, 2019, and it normally retails for $7.99. I got a free Steam key through the Steam Curator Connect program to review this game. And this is an interesting game. I don't think I've played one quite like it. There's been other disc throwing games, but this one's a little different. You've got this synthwave world, which we've seen quite a bit in VR. But in this game, you're on this moving platform. This is your room scale space, basically. And you will need the room scale setup. The Steam store page says standing room also, but I don't believe that's possible. You do have to dodge left or right to get around some of the pillars that you cannot bring down, and therefore you do need a room scale setup. You have two discs in both hands, and there's a problem there. The game automatically puts your hands, your virtual hands, in the front center of these discs, right in the middle, right at the front. So if you're front facing your sensors and you have your feet parallel to the ground, you will have trouble throwing these discs. I tried that. I found it uncomfortable. I found you had to really move out your hand, move out your elbow, bring in your wrist towards you, and it just makes for an uncomfortable position, especially having to throw these discs several times. What I found was much better is if you actually stand sideways like you would throwing a frisbee. This presents a problem because obviously you're limited then you can only throw the frisbee with one hand. But on the other hand, I found that if you did it this way, you can use the other frisbee, your non-dominant hand frisbee, to block incoming projectiles, which is really something useful in this game. You can block projectiles with either of your disc hands with the disc, and so I was using my offhand. The problem with that is that suddenly your disc will disappear from your offhand if you're not using it after a certain amount of time. I never figured out why they disappeared, but it seems to disappear at the most inopportune times. Usually when I was wanting to block something, finally with my offhand, then my disc wouldn't be in my offhand anymore. You do have to hold on to the trigger button on your Oculus Touch controllers to spawn the disc and hold it in your hand. I would have preferred the grab buttons myself. I find that it's on the Oculus Rift, it's a lot easier for holding items for extended period of times, and also for the throwing motion. I think that would have been better, but it's no big deal, except you will get tired of holding the item for any extended amount of time when you having to press down on the trigger button versus the grab button, which is a lot easier to keep pressed on the Oculus Rift rather than the trigger button. The levels, the dev mentioned there's over 2,000 levels. Something about user generated. I'm not sure how that worked. He talked about something about handcrafted and also computer generated. So I wasn't sure how these levels work. I was putting random numbers on the select level screen. So I put small numbers, single digits, double digit numbers, triple digit numbers, 4-digit numbers. I think the highest I went was 2001. And while there was some differences between the levels, obviously, the gameplay really never changed. So for me, it kind of just got boring after a while because the gameplay really never changes. It's really just more. And that's what I noticed. Some levels just have more enemies, more stuff to dodge. Some levels you're moving more left or right to avoid obstacles. Other levels have a whole lot of enemies shooting at you. And that was really the difference between the levels. But a lot of it looks the same, and a lot of the levels gameplay is exactly the same. So it really doesn't make much of a difference, the 2,000 levels, because one level really, if you ask me to visually describe one level from the other. The most I could say is, okay, this level had lots of enemies. This other level required me to move a lot, to dodge. But those are the only differences I can tell you, because they pretty much all look the same, and the gameplay is pretty much the same for each level. So, yeah, it does get repetitive. And to be quite honest with you, I was not really having fun playing this game. Now, I found it challenging, especially at first. It was really difficult to get used to throwing this disc. Eventually, I got used to it, and the way I got used to it, instead of, like I said, instead of having my feet parallel to the ground and front-facing, I did decide to go ahead and go with a frisbee throwing motion. Not full sideways, because you have to move around, but maybe like 3/4. So in between front-facing and sideways. That way you could still relatively move easily left or right, but also quickly throw the frisbee accurately. And so, yeah, I eventually did get pretty good at it after about an hour of playing. I got pretty good at throwing the frisbee. I got used to it, but the gameplay was never really fun for me. And although at times it was challenging, especially with the number of enemies around and having to be really quick about getting certain blocks to go. I'm not sure if you noticed from the gameplay, but there's certain colored pillars that you have to hit twice for them to go down. That way there's a path for you to go progress to the level. So you have to do that very fast at certain levels. But it's just never really fun. Especially the lasers that are shooting at you. I found them hard to dodge. I found it easier just to block them with your disc. Unfortunately, your disc disappeared at the most inopportune times, and I don't know why. And the other thing is, there's a really strange hitbox. There were times, I swear, that I completely missed the enemy target, and yet I still got counted as a hit and destroyed the target. So there's definitely an issue with the hitbox. It seems pretty generous. I guess that's good. Better than the alternative, I guess. But it still didn't feel accurate. And again, you're just going around on a moving platform and moving within that space. And the gameplay you're seeing here is pretty representative of every single level in this game. So whether you choose level 666, level 911, level 2001, level 69, level 13, whatever, it's gonna pretty much look the same, even though there are some differences. Obviously, I think maybe the later levels have a lot more enemies, but I'm not sure I saw a pattern really. I'm not sure that's true. I just know that the levels seem pretty repetitive, and some just seem to have a whole lot of enemies, or some really make you dodge a lot. But I can't really say that that you learn anything as you progress along, or that it gets more difficult. It just gets more frustrating, more repetitive, and yeah, I just wasn't having fun. So I can't recommend this game. I'm gonna give this game a 4.5 out of 10. I would have given it a 5 out of 10 if the throwing mechanic had been something predictable. But like I said, that hitbox issue and the way that you hold the frisbee really makes me bring it down to not recommend. I would like the option to grab the frisbee where you want. I would have preferred to grab it, like at a 45, 60 degree angle instead of front center. Anyways, I don't recommend it. I'm Fast Lawyer. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.